everybody. Whoop, whoop. Welcome to another episode of the Artful Leadership Interview Series. My name is Rochelle Archer, and I'm with Artful Leadership Coaching and Consulting. And my work is really about helping educational leaders prioritize their own well-being so that you can lead with a full tank, and also help you build a culture of community care that can really sustain your students and your staff through challenging times. And I know that we're up against some real challenging times right now. So keep me in mind when you're looking at all those transitions that you're making from online back to school and all the stuff that's going on. I'd love to help you. But that's enough about me. Today, I'm really excited to have a very special guest, and who's a dear, dear friend of mine, Tish Sjoberg. And she has accomplished so many wonderful things since we first met. We studied expressive arts therapy together in the early 2000s at the Expressive Arts Institute here in San Diego, traveled to Switzerland and did studying at the European Graduate School. And since then, she's founded Expressive Arts at 32nd and Thorn. She's written a really cool book. She's done some great community activism and developed an incredible sort of protocol for a daily art practice that I find super inspiring. So that's enough of me. Tish, welcome. Thank you for coming today.
Yay. Thank you, Rochelle. Hello, and hello, everybody out there. Thanks for being here.
Yeah.
I am the queen of daily art. I've been doing it for over 18 years now.
Wow.
And my idea has become, it didn't start out this way. I started it as a way to honor my mother, who had died. And she revealed to me before she died that she had always wanted to be an artist. And so when her 1-year death anniversary was coming up, I had this idea that I was going to make art every day for a year. So the world and I knew that I wanted to become an artist. And so that started it. And year one ended. And year one was, my creative confidence was pretty low. And so that's why I really understand when people don't feel creative or they don't think they can express, because I felt that same way. I had this great desire to paint, and I tried it, and it was so overwhelming I couldn't do it. So I ended up just doing kind of scribbly, oil pastel-y things, which turned me into a scribble artist. So you said I have a book. I have a book called Scribble Art. How to guide scribbling. And I also have a scribble kit, so everybody can become a great scribble artist. Because here's the thing, what I realize is nobody can say that they don't know how to scribble. All my life, I heard people saying, oh, I don't know how to make art. Oh, my friend's an artist. My sister's an artist. My mother's an artist. Everybody else is an artist, but I'm not an artist. Mm-hmm. And we also have this idea that we're going to just magically become an artist. And that's what I thought. I was like waiting in my life that someday the artist gods were going to tap me on the head and say, now it's your turn.
Artist.
And so what I learned was, by showing up regularly, for me it was every day, because it's easier for me to do something every day than it is to do something, I'm going to show up once a week or 3 times a week, because then I lose track. Right. And so then what I learned is, oh my God, it supports my life.
Yeah.
So that's my big message to the world, is we need things like this to support us through life. And not only does it support us, then it becomes a documentation of our life, so that we can look back and we can say, oh my gosh, that was the year of COVID.
Yeah.
And so every day, usually I sit down in the evening, because that's my best time. And it's also my time to reflect on my day. And I look at, what is it that needs to be expressed today? Mm-hmm. So if I had a challenge with a client, or a challenge with the studio, or usually it's challenge oriented, because it's easy
that wants to come out, right?
Right, exactly.
Right.
It's like when everything's good, it's harder to find something to make art about.
Right.
So anyways, so I put it out usually on paper, and that's my way to get it out of me, let something else hold it. And also to be creative. So it's, you know, when we get all stressed out, we're all this tight, oh my God, everything's so terrible. But then when we make art, we start opening up. Oh, look at that color. Oh, look at that. Oh, and we can get new perspectives. And so anyway, I am grateful that it found me. That's what I feel like, that it found me. So yeah.
Well, and I think it's so cool that there's also a lot of science to back up so much of what you're doing with that kind of practice. And like in my Facebook group, we talk about this a lot. Of the nervous system does really well when it has these routines, right? Of these times where we can breathe and come back to sort of our home space and our body. And our mind does really well when it has these opportunities to kind of like integrate things and put things together. And that helps so much with our stress response. And I think that's so important to have that foundation and those little routines. And Tish, can you tell us how much time do you usually spend on these little pieces of art every day?
Well, I usually have a system of sorts that at the minimum, it takes me maybe a minute, but I can go longer if I want to.
Right.
So, for example, a scribble, you know, a scribble can take 30 seconds to do. Oh my God, I had a terrible day, I had a terrible day, I had a terrible day, terrible day. And then, okay, how do I want to feel? Oh my God, I want to let that go. I want to let that go. I want to let that go. So what did that take? About a minute. But if I want, then I can go in and color it.
Yeah.
And then that's where, also not only does it, is that soothing as well, but it starts to create order out of the disorder of a scribble. And, you know, that's really what we want to do in our life, is to create some semblance of order or meaning out of what sometimes feels too big or too.
Yeah.
And really, I can't imagine what it would be like to be a teacher right now. You know, teaching online, it's a very challenging experience. And I know for myself, moving from a live studio to online, my hope was to create a experience that was as close to being in person as possible. So that's, what do I do when people walk in the door? Or what do you do when your kids walk in the classroom? We greet each one. Hi. I remember my friend Michelle used to hug or a handshake as every student walked in the door. Well, how do we do that online? And so to find our ways to connect in similarly and be inclusive, and how to do that with a bunch of black squares when a lot of kids don't have their videos on can be really challenging. So kind of like what you're saying, it's also that idea of the mirror neurons, that if we're all stressed out by that, whoever's on the other side is going to be stressed out too. And, and so in all my events, I almost always do a closed eye moment. And really, I'm doing it for everybody, because we don't have to get in our cars anymore and transition from home to the studio. We transition from our kitchen to our living room, or we transition from the bedroom. I mean, how many people are getting up in the morning in their pajamas and coming straight to their Zoom? So giving some semblance of transition, but really it's for me. I'm doing it for me so that I can get centered and I can drop in so that I can be of service to other people. So well,
I think it's a great role modeling, right? It's a great role modeling for everybody to just like, we don't have to just ram into things. We can acknowledge, we can honor our humanity and our physical bodies and our creative selves, and enter into a space with reverence, whatever space it is. So yeah, for sure.
And, you know, we're a society that doesn't honor transitions, period.
Right.
I mean, I'm thinking of just coming into this whole COVID stuff. There was not suddenly, boom, here we were in the middle of a world where that we didn't understand it. And everybody's wondering, why am I not focused? Why am I having a hard time? Oh, my life is good. I have things. I live in a house. I have a roof over my head. Well, what about all those other things that were needs that aren't getting met right now? And just to honor this transition from this to this, you know, I'm even thinking of grieving right now, that the world, when we're losing somebody, does not give us time to grieve. They don't understand that, you know, that's a huge transition. And right now we're grieving hundreds of thousands of people. And even if it's not in our own home, it still affects us. So there's the idea with a daily art practice, those things in the outer world. We just got through, and we're still in a very trying political time. So how do we stay sane with all that happening around us? So yeah,
and that's where that practice comes into play. You started talking about it a little bit in regards to, and I would love for you to share a little bit about your studio and kind of what your mission has been in that space, because it's such a special place in our neighborhood in North Park here in San Diego. And then, like, what has that looked like for you to transition from this very lively, warm, cuddly, colorful place to this online space for your community?
Right. Well, Expressive Arts at 32nd and Thorn is, you know, really, it's kind of been designed in the expressive arts way of poetically letting it reveal itself. Mm-hmm. And so in the poetic revelation, an area wanted to become a paint room. And I was really adamant that I wanted a place where people could get messy, because I have this idea, if we can get messy here, maybe we don't have to get so messy out in our lives. And also I had many contract positions where I had to clean up afterwards and make it look like I was never there, where I wanted a place where people could splatter and throw and drip and get messy and leave the remnants that they were there. So, and then we always have shows going on. We're having our first show in a year. The last show was my daily art practice for 17 years at that point. And we're having a show that's opening on the 19th. It's one woman from the studio, her pandemic portraits. Mm-hmm. So these portraits that came out that express her anxiety and her hopes, and so a place to show art so that there's always inspiration on the walls, and it's always changing, because we need change. We want to be inspired by something new. We stop seeing things. So that's something people can do in their own home, is you just move a chair and you feel like you're remodeled. Right. You know, you move a painting and oh my God, it looks so different, because we get so used to how things look that changing our surroundings can really be helpful. You know, buying new pillows or
no novelty. But I think something, you know, I appreciate that, but something that I want to make sure folks understand is, like, the people who are displaying their works of art at your spot are not like your typical artists, right? They're folks from the neighborhood primarily who are part of this community and are sharing, and it's in that same expressive arts model, right? Of like, we are all art makers, we're making meaning by making lines and marks, and that's one of the things that I've loved about being an artist in your community, is just, you know, redefining whose work gets to be shown. And
right. And the idea that I don't jury people in, because who is to say that your expression is better than your expression? Right. And I want everyone to be involved. So lots of times we have first time people showing a piece of art for the first time. In fact, Marie Capizzi, who's showing her pandemic portraits, the first piece she showed was in one of our day. It was a show on something, I think it was at the end of the year, the art that was made in the studio. And so I want to let everybody know, because sometimes the most inspiring work is the stuff that's not technically done, but it's from the heart.
Yeah. And
then sometimes we have kids' work that, oh my gosh, is there anything better than kids' work? I love the art of adults with developmental disabilities, because they just know exactly what to put on. Like they don't question it. So my idea is I want everybody to know that they can feel like an artist.
Yeah.
Do we need to be an artist? I think if we make art, we start to feel like an artist. That's the bottom line. If we make music, we start to feel like a musician. If we write, we start to feel like a writer. And it doesn't mean we're going to publish a book or we're going to end up on the top 40 list, but our life is enriched because of it. And my experience is, so with this daily art, I'm doing my visual art every day, but the rest of my life is becoming more creative too as I make art. So because I'm starting to look through the eyes of an artist also.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh, look at that piece of trash on the ground or in the trash can. Oh my gosh, I could make something out of that.
That's such an important mindset, right? Is for us to have this feeling that we're a creator in our world, because I feel like we often walk around feeling like a victim, right? That so many things are happening to us that are beyond our control. And when we tap into that creator essence of who we are, it's so empowering. And that's what I loved about working with youth, especially youth experiencing homelessness with the arts. It was like suddenly they got to be empowered and have agency in what they wanted to create in their lives. And that, like you're saying, rippled out to all these other places in their world as well. So I'm with you on that.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say, so instead of becoming a person with depression, we become a person who expresses our depression, or we become a person who throws color on paper, or we become the person who sings strange songs on the corner of the 32nd and Thorn, or
right. And it adds to our identity, right? And it's so empowering. So with this big, beautiful vision and this, this success story you've had with, you're going almost into 11 years now, right?
Yeah, we're in our 11th year. We celebrated 10 years during the pandemic, which was sad. We didn't get to have a party.
Yeah. So how have you transitioned? I mean, you talked a little bit about some of the things. Like, is there anything else you wanted to say about how you've transitioned your space to online and what's going on with that now?
Right. Well, where I'm at now, which is my challenge, which I'm sure is going to become everybody's challenge, is how to migrate between these two, in person and online. I don't necessarily want to work more. I don't want to double everything that I'm doing. So trying to find ways that we can work in studio and have people still checking in online, because we have people now from Canada, many different places in Canada, Britain, Scandinavia, all these places that we never could service before, and so that's the really exciting part, that now more people can participate with us. And I don't want to leave them out because of what's happening. So that's my newest challenge, and it's overwhelming at this moment. But once I start doing something, here's something I know: when I think about something, it's really overwhelming. But once I start doing something, it's not really overwhelming, because then we're in it and I'm adjusting and trying and doing. So that idea that it's scariest when it's just in my head, just like coming on from in person to online, it was scarier thinking about it.
Yeah. Well, and I love that you shared that kind of silver lining, because that's been one of the themes of our interview series too, is like, what have been the silver linings for you of the pandemic? And it sounds like, this little neighborhood studio that you've had now is reaching people all over the world.
Right. And also for years, I wanted to do online stuff. But because I was just thinking about it, it felt so overwhelming. And so when I knew that we were going, I had a hint that this was going to happen before it happened. So I got my friends together and said, help me do a practice Zoom group so I can figure this out. And luckily they were there for me. So getting the support of our community is really helpful.
Yeah.
And so I just want to say one thing that I think is so helpful and helps us be with each other when we're online. And it's these that we can reach towards people. Because we're just these talking heads, I feel like we have to use our hands, or else it becomes very boring.
Yeah.
And so I feel like that's part of my silver lining personally, is I become more gregarious in how I talk, because I notice I'm doing this out there too.
You're super animated.
I'm animated. But when we're sitting in front of people for a couple hours, if we can't find that life force, and how to get that life force through this medium. And I'm telling you, I have found this to be a very enriching experience. My one-on-one work and my groups, people are going to really deep places, even though they're online. And I think part of it is we have the safety of our own home.
Yeah.
Part of it is we can press a button and leave anytime we want. We don't have to say goodbye. So there are some things I do when I always get on my calls early. So I'm there to, and I don't have a waiting room for people, because I don't have a waiting room here. So I just want people to come in like they're coming to the studio and greeting people. When I'm done, I don't exit out until everybody's gone, because I don't want to shut the door on anybody.
Right.
I don't want to push anybody out the door. Yeah, maybe I have to say I have a meeting coming up, so we have 3 more minutes. But that's one of the places that community is built.
Yeah.
It's before and after.
And those transitions.
Exactly.
It's one of the things I've missed the most about this. And I do the same thing, where I'll show up early and I'll stay on long, because you don't get that little chit chat and like, oh, what have you been up to? And
right.
It's like, boop, here we are. Now we have to be super serious.
And when for me, when whoever's doing the group and they just exit out, I'm like, oh bye. What do I do now? Because we go from one moment of everybody's in our space with us to, oh my God, they're all gone.
Yeah.
So,
it can be a weird transition, right? So I love that you're doing that. Something else that you have incorporated into your daily art practice that I feel like is I don't know, to me, an even bigger extension of your love for community is this anti-racist work that you're doing. And I was just wondering if you could share a little bit with us what you're doing with that, because, and I want to acknowledge, just for those who are watching, Tish and I are very aware that we are 2 white ladies that have a certain degree of privilege in our lives, and that we are both so aware that it's the responsibility of white people and white women right, play a huge part in this, in dismantling white supremacy and racism. And so I wanted to just acknowledge that as you're sharing a little bit about the work that you took on, with the social justice uprising that happened last year and what you've continued to do. It's so inspiring and touching to me.
Right, right. I just want to say that I don't know how to say this. And see, that's part of the thing that we have to get over, is that we're worried we're going to say something wrong. Right. I have a page in my book. Can I find it? So here's working on this was when George Floyd was killed. And this is the scribble in the background that I did the day he was killed. And so then I turned it into a page in my journal. And so that idea that first I had to get my feelings out about what was happening so that I could express it. And then this page where it was like the coronavirus and George Floyd and the uprising together. Don't be afraid of doing something wrong. Be afraid of doing nothing. And this that was something that came up in my writing. And this is a quote from Edward Hale. I am only one, but still I am one. I cannot do everything, but still I can do something. And because I cannot do everything, I will not refuse to do something that I can do. So that's been my my leading force here, is what can I do? Yeah. And so in the beginning, my studio became a billboard for all my art around the racial justice issues. And some of the stuff was really hard to put out there because I knew that I could end up being a target. I knew that it could disturb my neighbors. Mm-hmm. And I knew if it scared me, I had to do it. So it's been a real great process for me of walking through what scares me and knowing that if it scares me, that's not a reason not to do it. It's the reason I have to do it. So some of the things, so first I started with that because I felt like I have this place, this corner lot, lots of windows. So I wanted to use it. And I wanted to encourage other people to make art that, that helped, I want to say the cause, but that feels like a really silly word to use, but to help move us forward, to help, how can we help our neighbor look at us differently, or how can we have that conversation that's hard to have? So from there, somebody from the studio, her daughter had a tradition of chalking the names of the women and people who were killed in the shirtwaist fires in New York City, in New York. And so she started chalking the names of people, men and women who are Black, who have been killed by police. Mm-hmm. So I joined her idea. So right now we have 3 or 4 people strong that we go out and we find a location. We move all over San Diego County, chalking the names of men and women who are Black that have been killed by police. And so what's something that sprung from that is when we had to go online because we had the purple stage, we started meeting online. Mm-hmm. And so that gave us the opportunity. Each week we would investigate somebody from our list and learn their story. Mm-hmm. And which has been an amazing, amazing process because how much we're learning about not only the people, but about mental illness being such a huge factor in police killings, that they are not equipped to understand how to work with somebody who has mental illness. So like, here's mine from last week is Charlena Siobhan Lyles. So I do them in my blind portrait way. So they don't always look just like the person, but the whole time I'm doing this, I'm thinking about her. I've looked up her story. She had 3 children that watched while she was murdered in her living room. So, and she called the police to come protect her, and she was killed. So this idea that we need to create change, but if we keep it big out there, this is what I'm learning. If we keep it big out there, it's hard to relate. But when we can go into the life of Charlene Siobhan Lyles,
right,
and that she had 3 children and she was pregnant when she got killed also, then suddenly, oh my gosh, here's a person. I can relate to that person. And also the variance of ages from 12 to 90 something. And so it's been a really great process for me. You know, and I'm reading the book 400 Souls, which is 400 years of Black America and slavery. And, you know, I'm sorry, I did not know how awful it was.
Yeah.
And I didn't even know until we started putting the light on white supremacy, my own mistreatment. Mm-hmm. So, I mean, we all have to learn at the rate that we're going to learn, but the Michelle Lyons and I just did a workshop, and the idea came up of the power of one.
Yeah.
So that, okay, I had this idea, and then I brought it to you, and then you brought it to them. So this idea that just one person can make a difference. I mean, if we look at Amanda Gorman and her poem at the inauguration, look how much change one person created.
Right.
And so the idea that to not deflect, that you have power to create change.
Yeah.
And that the arts are at the forefront of most change. So it doesn't matter if it's a scribble that, you know, is not pretty.
Yeah.
You know, this stuff isn't pretty.
Right.
So we don't have to, your day, you had a crappy day, you don't have to make pretty art. You can make crappy art that mirrors that crappy day. And then you can say, oh, there's my day. I think I can put it aside now. Let's start the rest of my day.
Right. Yeah. And I think something that's so important is art is a language, right? And we get to learn to speak it, just like we learn to speak any other language. But the more that we practice it, the more fluent we get in our expression. And the more we're able to get out there our message. But it is also just so helpful to just keep trying to speak it, right? Like, and we can't expect to just show up after, you know, I talk to adults all the time too. They're like, I'm not creative. Or it's like, well, when was the last time you practiced speaking the language of art? You know, if you were like in 3rd grade or something.
Right. And we think we know that you have to go to school to become a scientist or chemist or a mathematician, but somebody planted the seed that if you're going to be an artist, you have to know it. You have to be born with it.
Yeah, and just naturally do these amazing things.
Right. So I brought this thing to read from, you may have heard it before. It's from Martha Graham to Agnes DeMille, which this is what I want to bring to the world. Mm-hmm. Whether it's for our own personal life or the bigger world, we have to start here, though. We have to start with our own life, and then we can more authentically bring it out. Yeah. So I read this to all of you today. There is a vitality, a life force, a quickening that is translated through you into action. And because there is only one of you in all time, this expression is unique. And if you block it, it will never exist through any other medium and be lost. The world will not have it. It is not your business to determine how good it is, nor how valuable it is, nor how it compares with other expressions. It is your business to keep it yours clearly and directly, to keep the channel open. You do not even have to believe in yourself or your work. You have to keep open and aware directly to the urges that motivate you. Keep the channel open. So that's what we're doing. We're opening the channel. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's the biggest gift that we can give to anybody, to our students, to our family, to somebody who believes differently than us, is how do we open the channel? How do we keep that channel open? And then how do we follow those impulses?
Yeah.
So how many times have we not followed an impulse that later we thought, oh my God, why did I do that? Yeah. So that's what one of my main teachings, I guess I would say, in art is just follow the next impulse. You don't need to know where you're going.
Yeah.
The word justice comes up in your head. Okay, what do you want to do with that word? Oh, I want to write it down. Okay. And just wait for the next impulse. We don't have to know where we're going. And even if we even knew where we were going, I don't know, would it be as authentic? Who knows? Even when we know, so I guess I would say sometimes we do know where we want to go, but to let that go so we can end up where we need to be.
Right. And it's one thing to imagine what it's like to like get to the top of the mountain, but if you've never been, you don't know what it's like to actually be there.
Right.
Right. So yeah. And it's something you said earlier reminded me of Stephen Pressfield's book, The War of Art. And what he talks about when it comes to like fear and resistance, and how a lot of times our fear of things is a really good indicator that that's the exact thing we need to move into and towards. And I think that that's the same for conflict. It's the same for this anti-racist work. It's the same for the arts. It's the same for love. It's, it's like when we feel that big welling up in that block, it's like, that's probably because it's a big door we get to push through.
Right.
Like it's an opening. I got to push.
Right. And to know that we don't have to fling the door open wide. We can open it a little bit at a time. Woo, what's out there? Or what's in there, what's out there. So yeah. It's and so when we look at our life like that, it is a piece of art. How we live our life becomes a piece of art, and what a greater life can we live than that.
Yeah.
And
that's something I've been thinking about a lot too. And I'm involved in a new project that really looks at our legacy. And what kind of legacy do we want to leave, and what do we want to see different in the world as a result of our walking this path.
Right.
That's what I'm hearing in so much of what you're sharing today.
Yeah.
Well, I feel like that is a beautiful place to end this conversation. It's just such a joy to know you. You've been such an inspiration to me, and like a big sister or an auntie throughout so many years. And I'm excited to see what's next for you and Expressive Arts at 32nd and Thorn, and all the other work that you're doing.
Yay. Thank you. Big gratitude to you. I know I like to talk, and now I like to talk with my hands. So
now, like going live isn't that scary. So.
It is not that scary. That's what I was saying to myself last night. I'm like, you know what you know. She's not going to ask you something you don't know.
It's not a test.
So thank you, Rochelle. Thank you, everybody, for hanging out. And I wanted to throw out an offer every Wednesday night, 6 o'clock California time. We do Scribble to Music.
Okay.
So to invite people, if they want to come on, contact me. We can have some contact information, maybe.
Yeah, we can put some links in the comments below the video and make sure to include those. So
okay. Yeah, I would love for you, or go to expressiveartssandiego.com and my online stuff is there. So Scribble the Music is Wednesday night. So it's the perfect way to just, because we can scribble with a pen, we can scribble with words, we can scribble with our body, we can scribble with music. It's just a way, it can become a way of life.
Yes, yes, life.
Okay.
Awesome. Well, we'll
all
make
right.
sure things get there. Thank you so much, Tish. Love
all
you.
right. Mwah.
Bye.
Bye.